Does it worry you being a journalist in a place like Israel?
A lot of people that spoke out were explicitly put to shame on the primetime news with their photos and their names, saying these are the people that are, hinting for treason or saying things that I was even being called self-hating Jew, right? They can't say anti-Semite to me. It's crazy. And maybe even they use the word anti-Semite because of my criticism of my own government. It's not okay to criticize the Israeli government. It's, they've been wrong during COVID with what they've done to the Israelis and how they sold them to a pharma company. But now they didn't sell them to anyone and they're squeaky clean. And it's not right to even question their motives and interests and their actions. And that was complete hypocrisy to me.
Do you still think the same as what you did when you posted it to now 6 months later?
Yes. And even more.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 3 of the podcast, The State of It, talking all things politics, culture, and agendas. With me, your host, Lewis Brackpool. In today's episode, I would like to welcome my guest, Efrat Fenigson. Efrat is an independent journalist, podcaster, public speaker, and a marketing expert. Her podcast, You're the Voice, has made over 1.5 million views to date. Her main subjects that she writes and speaks on are about freedom and sovereignty, the growing global control regime, monetary changes, central bank digital currency and Bitcoin, politics, and propaganda. Efrat is a former chief marketing officer of global companies with a tech background for the past 20 years. She turned into a journalist during the COVID years as the mainstream media was void when talking about key issues. She was also featured by the Wall Street Journal as one of Israel's 2022 top tech leaders. We delved into topics such as what's it like, or even is it possible to be an anti-establishment journalist in Israel? We touched on the subject of antisemitism and if the term is being used as a weapon to shut down criticism of Israel's policies. We also touched on October the 7th, where Efrat's video of her asking questions surrounding Israel's intelligence on October the 7th went viral. I hope you enjoy the episode as much as I did. And as a reminder that this podcast is available to watch on YouTube, Rumble, and listen to on Spotify and soon to be Apple Podcasts. Efrat Fenigson, how are you? It's great to have you on.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me, Lewis.
No worries. I think I've known you for quite a while now. I think it's been a few years now. I can't remember when we last probably had like a chat about what's been going on in the world, but of course we're going to make it up today. But
probably a year and a half ago or something like
that,
or a year ago. Yeah,
it's been a long time. I think I first came across your content because a lot of it was to do with, it was either Bitcoin or it was I think
COVID at the beginning.
It was COVID, wasn't it? Yeah, I'd try and say it's other things, but no, it was COVID, wasn't it? It was all freedom related stuff.
Yeah.
How do you feel things have gone since then in terms of freedom, civil liberties?
A long way. It almost feels like in 4 years we have experienced enough stuff for like 25 years in normal times. It's as if time is accelerated and everything is happening so fast. And if we were used to meeting events in our lives, significant events, I'd say like good significance event once a month or once every few weeks. Now it's like every day there's stuff. And it's not just because I'm a journalist now, so I pay more attention. it's because there's really a lot of stuff going on in the world. And if you're a person who's curious enough, or at least cares about your living environment, and you want to be aware of what's going on and not just be a leaf in the wind that's just being blown to wherever the wind takes you, you want to start and understand what's going on. So to your question, it's 4 years, but so much has happened in those 4 years. And when I started with COVID, kind of opened my eyes to all the different lies that we were told. And I started questioning and checking and understanding the truth and how far it was from what we're being told, not only during COVID, but many times before. And that got me, branching out to many other rabbit holes. And as you do, you discover many different truths that have been hidden in many areas. So I've been very curious and interested in what's going on with our health, which led me, I think, very naturally to our food, and then to our climate, and then to our money that is basically is the oxygen of our society. And and people tend to think that we live in silos, that each of these topics is its own silo and it's not connected to the other ones.
Right.
But the magnificent insight or understanding, the more you learn, the more you understand that everything is connected, the more you understand that it's designed to make you think that they're all separate.
Right.
But really they're all intertwined. And if you want to go to the most simplistic explanation of it, you just go to the UN website and download Agenda 2030 and see how they're all connected, right? That's like the easiest way to understand that it's all connected. That if you want to understand it on a deeper level, and not just from their perspective, but also from life's perspective or a spiritual perspective, then you understand that we live in a matrix that is designed to compartmentalize everything we do and everything that we experience in life in a way that will keep us separated in terms of the topics that we handle, but also separated from each other in the discussions about those topics. And when you get the way the system is designed, life is designed, it makes everything so much more simple. Although it's like complicated to get into it, but then when you get it, it becomes so much more simple because it's so easy to then understand every event that you see popping. It's like Neo in the Matrix, right? All those bullets coming at you. And then you've got all this understanding that you've acquired in the past few years, and everything slows down because, as much as life is accelerating and more things are happening, you now have that knowledge. I know jiu-jitsu, just like he said, I've downloaded this program. So now I understand things in a different way, and I don't just take them for granted as they come to me. So I'm able to stop that bullet, look at it and say, oh, you're going that way. You're not going to touch me, right?
Got you.
And that bullet, oh, you're the money bullet. I get you too. You're not going to touch me either. Now I have to do stuff in my life. I have to implement actions in my life in order to not really let those bullets hit me. But if you are wise and you learn the lessons, but you also implement things in your life, you're able to then better your position and better your situation in life. And I think start experiencing life in a totally different way, where you become the sovereign, you become the one responsible for everything that's happening. You become the creator, you become the leader in your life, determining what is coming into your life and what is not, and what you allow to control you and what you don't. And, and you start exercising new ways of living and new techniques, technologies, information that you haven't had before that now you have, and you can start implementing in your life and as new habits and new things that you do. And that's really spectacular. So I think that if there's one thing that the last 4 years have given me or taught me is the first of all the humbleness to understand how much information there is out there that I am not aware of, and that learning is a muscle, and we kind of forgot how to learn, and I need to do that. And that's why I kind of turned my life upside down in order to make that my profession again, to learn and to then send out those messages to the world. And I feel really privileged for being able to do that. Not everyone can do that, with how hard life is and how demanding and how, especially the economic system is enslaving us. And I have the privilege of being able to do that. So yeah, I kind of changed my life about, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and started a new path and never looked back. And that's great.
Because you've had quite the exotic almost background in terms of where you were and where you are now. I mean, I'm right in saying that you worked for Israeli intelligence. That's true, right?
Well, I actually was a soldier in the intelligence system.
Wow!
It was my duty as a soldier when I was 18. It wasn't it's not work really. You get paid some pocket money just to live when you're 18 until you're 20. For every woman or girl in Israel, when you turn 18, you join the army. So I did. So it was my mandatory service. But then I also worked there for a few months after I finished my service as a citizen, and got paid but just for a few months until I started studying in university. So that's where I started. I mean, we can start there. And I served there for 2.5 years. And then I went on to do my computer science degree. And I studied in university in Australia. And I lived in Australia for 6 years in Melbourne. And I worked as a programmer for a few years. And then I transitioned to the business world because I didn't want to create technology. I wanted to create a story about technology. And so I shifted to business, and I had my own independent business in order to learn everything I needed to learn about business without going back to university. And I came back to Israel in 2007. And I started working in an institution that is semi-governmental called the Israel Export Institute. In the high-tech division, and I worked with a lot of tech companies and startups. And then I went to the private sector and worked for different startups and tech companies in Israel for about another, I'd say 13 years, 15 years. So until about a year and a half ago, I've worked in the tech industry in Israel. It's in Israel, but it's always global positions. And I was a marketeer. I was with time, I became more and more senior, and actually it happened quite quickly because I was pretty good at what I was doing. And quite early on, when I was 36, 37, I was already in part of management of companies. And I was a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, at those global corporates and startups. And I was managing many people around the world, big budgets, millions of dollars, carrying out marketing operations for tech companies, working with investors from Silicon Valley and Israel. I was holding really senior positions.
Wow.
And I was very well known. I mean, I still am probably in some circles in the tech community in Israel and the marketing community in Israel. I'm pretty well known. And I also had my own business with two partners called GCMO, which is a community of CMOs like myself, global CMOs like myself, 150 of them in Israel. but if I wrap up all this introduction or this background, I think that the bottom line is I came from a very successful background. I made a lot of money. I was a senior corporate executive, and I have a lot of experience in what I do. And I've decided to take all of my skills and expertise and put that towards the public good. A lot of the globalists we handle, they always use that term public good. I feel like I'm actually doing that by showing people the truth, or at least talking about what I think is important and what I think that can change people's lives, and people are too afraid to touch that. So yeah, I've decided to just go and embark on my own independent journey and become a journalist and fill in that horrible void that has been created by the corrupt mainstream media. And I have my own podcast today, and I'm, I have about 150,000 people from all around the world following me on all the different platforms, and I have more than 1.5 million views to the 22 episodes of my podcast in less than a year, which is quite remarkable. I just didn't expect it to be that good, that successful. And I write for a newspaper that is not censored in Israel, which is probably the only one that is not censored in Israel. And I also write on my Substack. And wherever I feel like there's this environment of trying to shut me down, I'll say, no problem. I'll walk away from that. And I have plenty of other channels that I've created in advance to cater for me in a free and elegant way. And I'll go there and I'll do my own thing. And if I resonate with enough people, they'll follow me. And that's what's happening. So
honestly, well, I've known you for a while now, and I've always seen the integrity and the consistency. So fair play and carry on, keep going, keep up the fantastic work. Like I said, known you for a while doing this, and, you are making an impact. So, good on you. I'm very, very happy. Thank you. I wanted to ask actually, what's it like being a journalist in Israel? I mean, we know Israel is a powerful entity in itself. And you mentioned, of course, about censorship and that you were working for someone who, isn't censored. So does it worry you being a journalist in a place like Israel?
Yeah, it's not easy at all, because it wasn't easy even before the war, because the environment, the atmosphere was quite toxic to people that are not in line with the mainstream narrative.
Got you.
And it started during COVID, and obviously it happened before as well, but it was more extreme during COVID. So it wasn't easy. But then when the war started, it became even worse, with an emergency situation declared again, another emergency, state of emergency, under which the government has put in place more regulations to control what you can and cannot say. And actually, I prepared a couple of things to just update you about that. One of the existing laws in Israel is called the Shin Bet Act. Shin Bet is the Israeli FBI, for those who don't know.
Okay.
And under this act, they are adding an amendment now, due to the war, that devices of people in Israel can be infiltrated by the Shin Bet in order to look through content without notice, without approval. I mean, they can just go into your devices and just look through what you're doing. And the association that I'm a part of, the Association of Journalists in Israel, have written a formal letter to the Prime Minister, giving their comments on this amendment to the bill, or not the bill, to the amendment to the law.
Sure.
And basically claiming that this is a violation of the freedom of journalism and freedom of press, and they have requested to exclude journalism out of this bill. Because, okay, if there is a real state of emergency and there is war and you must go into people's devices in order to look through their content, at least journalists have to be protected so that they can continue doing their work without fearing for their livelihood and their and being arrested by the government. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that there is you've heard about it. There is it happened a few months ago that the government of Israel is trying to shut down Al Jazeera in Israel.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so the same association, the Association of Journalism, which I'm a part of, has also written to the Prime Minister and the legal counselor of the government to give their proper, 5 pages comment about this act, this violent act of shutting down a communication channel, a publication in Israel, basically saying that this is a violation of freedom of press in general in Israel. And once they do that, they hurt freedom of press for everyone, for all journalists in Israel. They do it with Al Jazeera, but then who says that they cannot do it with other, journalistic channels as well. So I'm glad to see that they are doing that, because, I was very worried that there would be no official response from anybody in Israel to a very violent act of violation of freedom of journalism. And there is, but there's still no, I haven't yet seen any response from the government about that. But basically they're saying that they're, that it's a violation of the freedom of speech, freedom of journalism, and the right of the public to for information if they go ahead and shut down a communications channel. Now, regardless of what we think of mainstream media or of Al Jazeera, of any other mainstream media outlet, regardless whether we think they're good or bad or overtaken or not, it's just a continuation of the state of affairs around the world with journalism. And if we tie this to what's happening with Julian Assange and what's happening with a lot of other journalists around the world, what we've seen happening with journalists in Gaza during the last few months, this is horrific. The fact that governments and institutions are taking that power to their hands and shutting down discussions by explicitly hurting journalists. It's crazy. This is the darkest. I think this is the darkest we've come in a long, long time. Sure, they're censoring us through social media and they're censoring us through various other means and, listening to everything we do and surveying us and all that, but then also explicitly targeting and attacking journalists. Wow. This is like, where have we gotten to, And so what is happening with me specifically is that I'm trying to be very careful with how I cover things, what I cover. To be honest, I was never a wartime journalist. I started with covering COVID and health and, then everything we talked about, climate and money, more economy and things like that. But then when the war started, I spoke out about that because it was a natural thing for me. Things happened. I had something to say. I came out and said it. And I had to be very careful because there was this witch hunt going on in the days and the weeks following October 7th in the mainstream media in Israel, that a lot of people that spoke out were explicitly put to shame on the primetime news with their photos and their names, saying these are the people that are, hinting for treason, or saying things that, saying things that could hurt national morale. And we need to know who these dangerous people are, and they're spreading fake news, and we need to take them down. And there are some really horrible services, like one that's called Fake Reporter, which is another fact-checking service out of Israel that is working 24/7 in fact-checking your stuff and putting your name out there with a big fake on it, saying that you're spreading fake news. So it's a very tough environment to operate in. And then add on top of it the actual social acceptance of people to the things that I may have to say, which is, it's a thing in itself, because most people don't want to accept anything that is deviating 1 millimeter from what they hear in mainstream media. It's very hard for them to accept the notion that the government is not taking care of them, that they're on their own, that they're being forsaken, that, they're being sold off, that, that they have to trust themselves. And that's my narrative. Yeah. And it's not easy to speak out when that's my context. And so it's not easy for me to do what I do, but I guess with time I'm becoming stronger and stronger, because my skin's becoming thicker. And good. I'm facing a lot of that bullshit, but I'm much stronger today than I was before. And I know that I'm truthful. I know that I'm, whenever I come out and speak out or write about something, I try to be as factual as I can. And when I am bringing up my own opinion, I say that it's my own opinion and my own interpretation. And last time I checked, you can do that as a journalist. You just say that that's what you do. And so I do that, and I continue doing that, and I ignore the noise because it's more important than me. Yeah. And
I've noticed something as well with regards to the divide or the polarity within Israel, especially when people want to either criticize Israel's policies or just the government's decisions. I've noticed that there's been allegations thrown around where if someone outside of Israel criticizes the Israeli government or anything like that, or their policies, they get thrown the label like anti-Semitic a lot. I've seen that quite a bit, even from people that I thought were part of, I don't know what you want to call it, freedom movement, or they're quite open-minded with challenging certain narratives. Have you noticed this too? Because I'm starting to notice this a lot more, that this allegation of anti-Semitism is being thrown out, because there's obviously genuine anti-Semitism out there, of course, but to use that as almost like a weapon to stop criticizing. Have you noticed this too?
100%, to the point where I was even being called self-hating Jew, right? They can't say anti-Semite to me. It's crazy. And maybe even they use the word anti-Semite because of my criticism of my own government. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And one has to be very vigilant with distinguishing between legitimate criticism to the Israeli government and hating Jewish people. And yes, I do see a lot of anti-Semitism. I do see a lot of people just hating Jews. And it's become also so easy to find your reasons to hate Jewish people now. Sure, I get that. Just like it was probably in the 20s and 30s in Europe. But you have to be smart. First of all, you got to distinguish between the Israeli government and Israelis. It's not the same. If people are criticizing the government or the decisions of Israel, when they say Israel, they mean the government, because who decides? The government decides, not the people. Sure. So first of all, you have to distinguish between the people and the government. And if your words are attributing to the government, fair enough, your criticism is, it's legit. It's about the government and the policies and what this country is choosing to do as a country. And the ones that are pulling the strings are obviously not the people. So that's one distinction. It's just like in, Russia, Ukraine, everyone was like, there may have been people that are criticizing Russia or Ukraine, and that didn't mean that they're criticizing the people.
Exactly.
They're criticizing the people who are pulling the strings. And so you gotta detach your emotions from it. And the fact that I'm Jewish and Israeli doesn't mean that I have to take everything personally. That criticism is targeted towards my government and not towards me or towards Jewish people in general. Secondly, you also have to look at whether people are using the anti-Semitism label, as you said, as a weapon, or they are allowing for a legitimate discussion about the facts and about the things that are happening, or even about history and about the origins of the conflicts and things like that. And I think there's a space to have that discussion and to hold those legitimate, discussions. But at the same time, if it's being labeled as anti-Semitic to even have these discussions, then again, we've just like what we talked about before, we're killing freedom of speech, we're killing discussion, we're killing the ability to expand our knowledge and understanding, and we're limiting ourselves once again to slogans and narratives and small soundbite phrases and sentences. It will be easier for us to digest and throw back again, instead of really having an intelligent discussion. So, I'm a Jewish person. I'm a granddaughter to Holocaust survivors. Obviously, I wouldn't want to see society hating Jewish people again. I know what could happen as a result of that. But at the same time, I can hold a complex space and understand that the actions of my own governments are so horrific that it will spark hate towards Israel. Israel as an entity, as an entity, right?
Sure.
And then we have to be smart enough to separate that entity into its organs, and try and separate people. And also got to be careful with labeling all Jewish people as bad. And if there's one thing we all should have learned from the past 4 years, is that in every group that we will take and put in front of our eyes, and we look at that group, we will never be able to find one common thread or denominator. Not one. We will not be able to find a common thread that is conclusive inside that group, that most of this group have this in common, that almost everyone is homogeneous, in their ideas or perceptions or views. You will always have different opinions and different views and different ideologies. And that's normal for every group. So if you take Jewish people as a group, are all Jewish people the same? If you take, Arab people, are all Arab people the same? If you take, people who chose not to experiment on a vaccine, are they all the same? If you take all people that, look up to the sky and they say that they see chemtrails, are they all the same? Like, in every group you have differences, and you have to be smart enough to not operate under generalizations, because you'll be labeled, and maybe sometimes rightfully so. So, try to have more intelligent discussions rather than blurbing out those catchy tweets online that will just bring you all that fame and glory and likes.
Yeah.
But rather, invest in this intelligent, deeper discussion with people about, if you really want to touch on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, touch it, but in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
So not to just spark more hate, because we've got plenty of that.
Yeah, I think we've got a bucket load of that at the minute. I think, do you know what's interesting? Talking about the term anti-Semitism, how do you feel about this? And feel free to push back on this. I feel as though because this term has been thrown out so much and just been used so much against so many things that quite clearly aren't anti-Semitic, like what we discussed about maybe it's criticism of the government, maybe it's even criticisms, not hatred, but criticisms of maybe Judaism or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Throwing the term anti-Semitism out is losing its potency so much, because 10 years ago, you call someone an anti-Semite, it's like, you do not go near that person. That's it. You do not talk to this person. You do not engage with them. But now that term, a bit like other terms like racist or white supremacist, homophobic, transphobic, all of these terms, they've been watered down so much over the past 10, 20 years that it's gotten to the point where it's like, but what does that mean now? Does that actually hold weight to this conversation? Does it actually mean that? So I guess my question is, do you see that potency diminishing? And I guess another question is, what do you think defines actual real anti-Semitism, if you don't mind me asking?
So let's start with your first question. I do see the potency diminishing with time. It's used and abused. But then it has me stopping to think in the last few months about the actual term of anti-Semitism and the fact that it became so prevalent after the Second World War, again, for a reason, Holocaust, sure, 6 million people were murdered. I get that Jews were murdered. But then the thing that pops into my head is, I don't know if that's the right term for it in English. You correct me if I'm wrong. Corrective discrimination. Is that a term? Because, I'm taking it from the world of feminism. You know how feminists sometimes say that, or maybe even in South Africa with apartheid, right after the apartheid, they said in order to fix the problem of discriminating one race or one group, we now need to correct that with some rules, laws, and regulations and make sure that minority group is now being given a protection by the law, right? So with feminism, we see them calling out for at least X number of women on boards of companies, or in South Africa, you got to have Black people, or sorry if I'm saying the wrong word, again, in companies or as part of groups, as part of the law. In order to fix that discrimination, we have to correct it and go strongly to the other side of, throw the pendulum to the other side in order to try and bring back the balance that we think is the correct balance. And then I'm asking the question, who decides what's the correct balance? Who decides why one minority needs to be protected in such a way?
Bingo.
And that goes back to the system of governance that we have, the democracy that is enabling all these kind of laws. And then, dissidents, people will just listen to what I'm saying now and they'll start saying, so what are you saying? That we don't need to protect Jewish people, that we don't need to protect Black people, that we don't need to protect women?
But that's the knee jerk. That's the knee jerk. That's the knee jerk reaction.
Exactly. But I'm raising a point here. Do we actually have to make that protection of minorities part of the law, that if you don't abide that law, you go to jail or you being punished in some way? Or do we leave it for society to kind of correct things organically or naturally? If we educate people to self-respect and then to respect the other, do we really need to, and we take out a lot of the indoctrination that we see in the education system to kind of brainwash us to we're superior, they're oppressed, we're better, they're bad. In every country, it has its own manifestation. Then do we really need to put these things in place later on in the law in order to enforce that? Or do we just raise up generations of people that are a lot more peaceful and loving and respectful and understanding of each other and of society and of life and of how to live side by side without perpetual state of war? And that takes me even one layer further, deeper or further, to look at the money system, because I think that a lot of the design of the matrix that we have today that is allowing these, again, I used the word violent in the beginning, but maybe maybe there's another better word that I need to find for it. It's not violent, but it's kind of like coercive. It's like it's a coercive mechanism of, we are the state. We will decide what's right, what's wrong. We will put all these rules and regulations in place, and we will decide where the truth is, and we will indoctrinate and we will educate and we will design systems that will support that. And one can look at how the economic system is designed and say that it's all a result of the economic system and the money system, and the fact that we live in a world where we have to constantly enslave humanity in order to work for their money and be taxed and have inflation that will chip away their money, and they have to constantly produce so that other wealthier people could take away their money in a very sophisticated way. And that, in a way, is the root cause to a lot of the problems we see in society. That has people be very aggressive toward each other. And that has people take the example of governments and how they govern people. I would go with anarchy every day, but again, people would, knee-jerk again will say, she's crazy, this one. Knee-jerk. Anarchy means chaos. No, it doesn't. It just means that we have sets of rules and regulations that we all abide for, but we don't need a govern. We don't need a system to govern us. We can govern ourselves, right? And we're just not used to think in those terms at all, because we're so used to having someone controlling and someone above us, that these concepts, these ideas are so foreign to us. So, I'm sorry, I've taken your question really far away.
That's okay.
But if I try to bring it back to anti-Semitism, it's a label just like so many other labels that we have in order to simplify life, because life has become so controlled that someone has to dictate what is true and what is not, what is right and what is wrong. And anti-Semitism, as much as, yes, it exists, as much as you have hate in the world and some people hate Jewish people, yes, it's still used in such a weaponized way by governments. In Germany, you could go to jail if you're an anti-Semite in a way.
Yeah.
Now things are starting to change, but for the past tens of years, because of everything that happened during the Second World War, Germany made it illegal to show signs of anti-Semitism. In Israel, it was out of the law. I mean, it was forbidden to call someone a Nazi.
Right.
You could go to jail if you're using the word Nazi on someone.
What do you think of that? Do you think that's right?
Now it's fine, by the way. Since October 7th, we're allowed to use that.
Oh, you're allowed to use that now.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
It's fine to use since October 7th. Israel is a hypocrite as well. Yes.
Do you think that's right? Do you think that's wrong?
What is?
The law juxtaposing onto the people if they express these abhorrent views. Like, do you think someone should go to jail for expressing abhorrent views?
It's hard for me
a hard
to
one, isn't
answer.
it?
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer because it's a complex question. I have to dive really deep. But I would say that obviously I'm opposing any incitement to violence.
Of course.
And any speech that is inciting people to hurt other people, sure, should be stopped and banned, no matter the basis. But then hate speech, I don't know who defines hate and what is. I mean, sure, there can be hate, but is it illegal to hate? I mean,
yeah.
It's going to be funny what I say now, but I hate hating, right?
Yeah, sure.
I hate hating, and I don't want people to hate, but hate exists in the world. And are we going to stop hate because we make it illegal? Are people going to stop being hateful? Do we need to go to the root cause of the problem and ask what's making people hateful rather than banning it to be hateful?
Yeah.
You know, do we really need to look at ourselves and ask what's making us hateful? Where is it? Where is the root cause? Is it the education system? Is it the money system? Is it the what is it? Is it the health? Mental health? What is it that have people be so hateful? Why are we? Let's handle this question for a change, you know, and we're just looking at the symptoms instead of looking at the actual problem, just like we're doing everywhere with everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have a yes or no answer, but it's hard. It's a hard topic.
It's a hard one. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard because you're right. It's not necessarily a yes or no answer, because if you say yes or you say no, you have to extrapolate it. You have to go into detail, because otherwise people will start once again throwing the weaponized words out again, right?
Sure. And there are nuances. That's the thing. People have to start thinking in a more deep, complex way. It's okay to want something and still object something else, and, you know, raise up those legitimate paradoxes or conflicts and think about them, discuss them, and try to create something new around them. But if we continue to just ban stuff and put that in the law, and who puts it in the law? The same corrupt people that we don't like, and that we understand that they don't have our best interest in mind, but other people's best interest in mind, then we're just continuing to give them more power. So, you know, in the end of the day, what I would love to see in the world is more people stepping up to regain their powers from institutions, governments, and world leaders to their own hands, while understanding the volume and the velocity that we have as the mass, as the majority power in the world, and take back that power, you know, on many different levels, in many different walks of lives. It will have many different shapes and forms.
You put out a video, it's quite some time ago now. It was about 6 months ago, and it was to do with October the 7th. I know it's a difficult subject to touch on, obviously, because, like you said, being a journalist in Israel, I can imagine it's quite difficult to really sort of pick apart a narrative and really see it for what it is. But you put out a video on X, I remember it, and you questioned the intelligence of Israel in terms of the intelligence agency, right? And that went viral. Like you blew up from that. Like, that video was going everywhere. You had people, Brett Weinstein, of course, got in touch with you, and you done interviews with him, and you had a really great conversation with him about, you know, the current scenario. Even Majid Noir, who's on the other side, like, has, you know, took that video and was like talking about it and was sharing it around, and people were really, but then of course you had people that didn't approve of what you were saying and didn't like what you were questioning. Do you still think the same as what you did when you posted it to now 6 months later?
Yes. And even more
than
I thought back then.
Did as much as you want. Did you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I can talk about it. I can talk about it, and we can split it to a few parts. The first part is the reactions I got.
Sure.
As much as I got amazing reactions, and it blew up for a reason, it blew up because it resonated with so many people that thought the same.
Sure. Including myself, by the way.
Sorry?
Including myself, by the way.
Yeah, sure. And I appreciate that completely. And it was on that day that it happened, on October 7th, that I just had the urge to go up and say what I think is happening based on my experience in the army and based on my knowledge. And not only that, I'm not sorry that I did that. I am so proud that I did that, because first of all, the journey I went through since I did that was amazing. I became stronger in facing people who call me names and ridiculing me, some of them even from the freedom movement, thinking that they're free people, shutting me down and telling me, no, it's not okay to criticize the Israeli government. It's, they've been wrong during COVID with what they've done to the Israelis and how they sold them to a pharma company. But now they didn't sell them to anyone, and they're squeaky clean. And it's not right to even question their motives and interests and their actions. And that was complete hypocrisy to me. So I did not respond to even one critical voice about me, because I knew I'm speaking truth, and because I knew that the fact that they are doing what they're doing is just going to reveal their hypocrisy.
Just quickly.
And I don't need to say anything.
Just quickly as well, to remind, what exactly were you questioning? And
I was saying, well, basically I was, first of all, bringing the voices of the people of Israel that were fucking stuck in their homes and being butchered, and no one was coming to save them, when we know that Israel has one of the most sophisticated defense systems in the world, and they should have done something. They normally do something. So based on what we know of the Israeli security systems, this was completely weird. This was completely out of the ordinary. It was not typical for the Israeli reaction. And so I was questioning, how come no one was coming to save them? What is happening that you are allowing people to be butchered in their homes without protecting them? And I said that, in my opinion, the Israeli people and the Palestinian people were being sold out once again to the higher powers that be, that are probably creating another, I didn't use the term false flag, or maybe I did, I don't remember, but that they're creating another false flag in order to justify going into Gaza and, starting another war, which has happened. and they did. Surprise, surprise. So, and I was basically saying that there are bigger powers than what we think, than just Israel and Hamas, that are playing this move on the chessboard. It's such a small move in comparison to the bigger game. And I was looking at it from a zoomed out perspective, putting together more parameters to this than the eye could see. And that's some of the things that I was speaking with Brett Weinstein on his show about, and kind of shedding more light, bringing more facts of what was happening on that day, so that people can put together the pieces of the puzzle and hopefully ask the same questions that I'm asking and demand some answers. Now, no cut clear answers came since then. I mean, there is no one conclusive answer from the government of Israel saying, yes, we knew, we fucked up. There is nothing like that, but there is a lot that already came out since then. And I do have some more information that I can share with you if you want.
Of course.
To clarify on some of those things that came out.
Sure.
yeah, so, just to summarize that, I'm very happy I spoke out, because it looks like a lot of the stuff that I was intuitively feeling and voicing turned out to be correct. And so there are many things that came out since then, and people who want to see some of those things are, invited to go to my Telegram channel or my Twitter. And I was posting more in the beginning, in October, November, December of last year. But because I'm not covering the war so much, I just covered that event more. But there is more information that came out recently, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, on March 7th, actually, my birthday. There's a TV show in Israel called Uvda, which is translated to Fact, which is like the American, it's like the American 60 Minutes kind of investigative journalism show.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, people can question their bias, whether it's left wing, whatever. At the same time, a lot of the materials that they brought up in the last few months was highly factual and based on real materials that came out from the army and the security intelligence systems. Basically, to start from the end, they knew the intelligence forces, the intelligence and security apparatus in Israel knew about what's coming in October 7th.
Right.
The thing is that they thought it was a drill. They thought it was an exercise. They thought it was a training coming up. They didn't think it's going to be the real deal, the actual massacre that happened on October 7th. And some of those evidence include early warning signs that came to the intelligence forces. For example, they had a blueprint of a plan from Hamas about a year before. They drafted that into a document, and that plan document was circulated inside the security forces, around the security forces, about a year before.
Right.
Okay. So they actually knew what, if that is going to happen in Israel, what it's going to look like. And that document outlines step by step exactly what happened on October 7th. It's as if someone has written the future, right? A year before. The night before, they had many signs, but they didn't act on it or took it seriously. I mean, they acted really, really tinily. The Shin Bet, again, is the FBI. Shin Bet is Shabak. It's the actual organization that is in charge of surveying the Palestinian authorities all the time in order to protect Israel and know whether a threat is coming. And the Shin Bet has systems in place that have alerted on October 7th. So, for example, they have tens of SIM cards that are Israeli SIM cards that were in the hands of Hamas terrorists that were inserted into the Palestinian mobile phones on the night of October 6th at the same time. So let's say, I don't know how many, 50, 60, 70 SIM cards at the same time inserted into Palestinian phones, because they were about to cross the border, right? And they needed phones to communicate. And so that was one of the signs that Shin Bet had. They knew that was happening. The telecommunications companies had that signal. The Shin Bet had that signal that knew that was taking place. And they considered it a weak signal because they didn't see movement of the people. They saw that the SIM cards were swapped, but they didn't see that people were moving around with them. Okay. And then there's another signal. They intercepted communications between Hamas operatives, including one Hamas terrorist saying to another, "Tonight we take the Erez crossing." Erez crossing is the border. where they infiltrated through. They infiltrated through 15 points, but that's the biggest one of them, the most secure border between the Gaza crossing and Israel. And so they intercepted a communication between two Hamas terrorists saying, tonight we take the Erez crossing. But they still thought that it's only an exercise and not the real deal. They had information that Hamas leadership went underground into bunkers at 1:30 a.m. at night before, on the night between the 6th and the 7th. 8200 is the intelligence unit of the army, of the IDF. They had this information that a lot of senior leaders of Hamas went into the bunkers at 1:30 a.m. at night, which is raising a suspicion, but they didn't inform the Shin Bet. Apparently, I mean, that's what the investigation of that TV show Uvda is saying. Another signal, 8200, the same unit, the same IDF unit. It's an intelligence IDF unit. They had an increase of 700% in the volume of communications in the 3 days prior to October 7th. I mean, they intercepted 700% more communications that were related to the event. It appears that the days before the attack, they had those signs, including many conversations, hundreds, thousands, I don't know how many conversations between Hamas operatives in a code language that only in hindsight, they interpreted them as instructions for the October 6th, 7th attack. Okay, so they had that signal as well. At 3 a.m. at night, the night before October 7th, Shin Bet sends a document out to all of the security forces in hundreds of copies, concluding that based on the weak signs that they have, and I'm quoting, Hamas is not planning to escalate and to attack at this point. That's the conclusion of the document at 3 a.m., right? And I remind you that the massacre started at like 6, 7 a.m. So 3-4 hours before, they're sending out this document to all of the different leadership of the security forces in Israel, telling them, yeah, we know about it, but Hamas is not planning to escalate and they're not planning to attack at this point. So essentially, if you put all these points and signals together, you're seeing that, and that's the official narrative. The official narrative is they knew, but they had the wrong conception or perception of reality. They thought that Hamas was deterred, that Hamas was not planning to attack, and therefore they did not react. Everything I said now is still not answering the question, why did you not show up with massive forces to then attack back or protect the civilians after it was clear that a massacre is going on at 6, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning, when I knew that is happening and everyone else in Israel knew that was happening. Now, the Shin Bet, that's another important point to add, that the Shin Bet claims that they've recommended many times in the past, in the last decade, to take down Hamas leaders based on their knowledge that they had. And their recommendation was not fulfilled. It was not taken and was not acted upon. And then to this 1 hour investigative item that Uvda put out, they have taken the official responses from the Shin Bet, the IDF, and the Prime Minister office. And the Shin Bet basically said that they work together with the IDF in the Gaza Strip to achieve the goals of the war right now. And alongside the fighting in the various sectors, the Shin Bet began an operational investigation of the events of October 7th. And at the end of it, the main findings that will be published and presented to the public. That's what the Shin Bet was saying. The IDF spokesperson said that on October 7th, the IDF failed to protect civilians and went to war. The IDF is now focused on fighting in Gaza and other arenas together with the Shin Bet. Along with the continuation of the war, the IDF began investigation of the events of October 7th. And the investigations deal with several focal points, including the events of the night before. Upon completion, the findings will be transparently presented to the public. And the most unsurprising response of all is the Prime Minister's office response. These are false and baseless claims.
So after all that evidence gathered, it's just completely dismissed. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't understand. I think the other narrative I heard was, well, it was on, is it Yom Kippur? Is that what it's called? The anniversary? So I think it was a holiday, wasn't it?
Yep, Yom Kippur is it's the 50 years exactly from the Yom Kippur War on the 6th of October, 1973.
Yes.
One of the excuses that were given for why there were not enough troops positioned in order to fight back was that 80% of the troops were positioned in Judea and Samaria area near Jerusalem in order to protect some of the settlements there and members of parliament that were based there at that time. So that's one excuse for why the troops were not there. And the second thing is that there was a holiday, not Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is it's a name of a holy day for Jewish people, but it's also the name of the war, the Yom Kippur War that happened 50 years earlier. And there was another Simchat Torah is the name of the holiday that was on that specific Saturday. And because it was a holiday weekend, then a lot of troops were at home. Yeah. So these are the two excuses. Yeah. Some of the troops were positioned somewhere else and another part of the troops were at home because of the holiday. And that's why we didn't have enough troops on call. And again, it's not a good enough answer because Israel has a very big air force, for example, that could have attacked. And only one helicopter at best was launched, or maybe two. I mean, there were many, many things that could have happened that didn't happen. I'm still under the opinion that too many stars do not align here and create a very big question mark about the response to that event, which then has you know, if you like me think that everything here doesn't add up, then you will also be questioning what's happening right now in Gaza for so long and why and whose interest is it? You know, who wins from this long war that doesn't look like it's bringing any victories to anyone. You know, both sides are being hurt. Obviously, the Palestinians are being hurt more. And it's really unclear. I mean, it's clear to me with my opinions about the bigger powers that be, like the geopolitical interests and the U.S. hegemony trying to protect the Middle East and, you know, and China and Russia behind the scenes, you know. So it's clear to me, but most people don't understand why this is carrying on and why Israel is behaving the way it's behaving. And a lot of people will tell me, but you're crazy. We have to eliminate Hamas. And I would say, as much as I would love those, you know, terrorists to be wiped out from the face of the earth, because I think Hamas is a terrorist organization and it's evil. Is this the way to do it? Is what we're doing now the right way to do it? And it's almost 6 months since it happened, 5 months now. Does our way work? Is it working? Is it, I don't know. And again, I'm not a military expert and I would not try to pretend I am, just as a normal citizen, you know, paying the price like everyone else, the price of, you know, living in a war zone, but also the price of being hated by so many of my global neighbors, because I am Jewish and Israeli, and the price us Israelis are going to be paying for many, many years to come with what our government is doing right now. It's not something I'd vote for. Plus, there is not even it doesn't look like there's any real effort from the Israeli government side to bring back the hostages that are still in Gaza. I mean, it's been 5 months. I don't want to think what's happening with those people. But anyway, it doesn't look like a serious response to me. Like, I think it's just revealing more and more the faces of the people that are running this show, which are, by the way, the exact same people that were on the helm on October 7th. None of them went home. None of them is in jail. None of them have taken responsibility and resigned. They're all there, still running the show. Same useless people that got us to where we are right now, right? Even if it is just a failure and not a treason, like everyone is wanting to believe, even if it is just a failure, shouldn't they be at home or in jail for what has happened? Seriously.
I totally understand. It's a very, very difficult subject, and especially from someone like me who isn't Israeli, who's from a completely different country, to originally want to question what is happening, and as a journalist as well, wanting to try and find out the truth, no matter how difficult that may be, and how many hoops you have to dive into, and how many people are going to call you names and, you know, belittle you or try and smear you just for trying to find out the truth. And, you know, it could be something completely different. Who knows? Because sometimes conclusions arrive, and then I'm more than happy if I get something wrong, I just go, fine, I got that wrong. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, let's now figure out the truth, and let's now put that together in perspective and correct it. And that's how as journalists should run. What I hate to see is people not critically thinking about situations, and especially something that is obviously a very emotional time for a lot of people, especially, of course, Israelis that what happened on October the 7th, and of course what is happening now in Gaza. And a lot of emotions are very, very high, very, very high. Unfortunately, nobody wants to have a rational conversation when it surrounds this topic, and I find that to be very, very sad, because if you value truth, if you value wanting to go out and find truth, then surely the first port of call is to sit down and say, here's what I think, here's the reasons why I think this, here's the evidence to why I think this. Let's have a conversation, a calm one, to try and figure out what is going on. And I hate, like, reverting back to what we were talking about earlier, there are a lot of people that think exactly the same as you and that ask the same questions, but are called labels to try and shut people down from asking questions. And it creates a toxicity surrounding people who just simply want to find answers, and that's all it is. It's nothing malicious. It's not out of hate. It's not out of bias. It's not out of you support this person or you support that group. It's got nothing to do with that. It's finding truth. It's finding there's something wrong here. There is a question mark here. What is the answer? And it's sad that people can't really see that, and people jump to conclusions.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that when you are entering the field of Israel-Palestine conflict as a topic of discussion, it is a difficult playing field to be in, because I really think, after delving into a lot of information myself, that it's a battle that cannot be won by any of the sides. There are arguments and evidence and information to support each side. And and I'm not saying which side I'm on, because I'm not on any side. I don't think that this side is right or that side is right conclusively. I think that there are certain things that some of the sides are right about. There are some factual things that happened during the history that we need to just acknowledge and, not argue with the facts of what has happened. But at the same time, trying to bring this topic or conflict into a decisive truth-revealing event, I think it's almost impossible, or maybe even impossible, because this specific topic is so complex, it's so intertwined, it goes back so far that I'm not entirely sure that it can be resolved in our time, in our lifetime, and in our tools, with the tools we have. And so, whenever I put my foot in that pond, I take it straight back out, because there's no point in being there. I mean, I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to learn more. I'm happy to open myself up to be part of these discussions, or respect other people that want to conclude these discussions or have them. But I personally don't choose to go there, because I don't think that it will be productive or effective. I don't think one side can win. I do think that at one point, if you're like me and you realize that it's a hard topic and you cannot find the truth, capital T truth, then all you have left is respect and love, because you then ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to live, and what kind of legacy do I want to leave for my son? Do I want to continue this conflict? Do I want to perpetuate the situation? Do I want my son to go to the army and fight? Do I want Palestinians hating me more and more? Do I want people around the world polarizing even more, and anti-Semitism rising? Do I want this reality in my life? And if my answer is no, I do not want that. I don't want that kind of life. I don't want that kind of reality. Then all I am left with is peace, love, and respect in myself and in my environment. And that's what I'm trying to create, because I don't think that there's an easy way out of this. Okay, so at one point, all weapons of war have to be put down and say, okay, enough damage was done. Just like in the end of every war, in the end of every conflict, in the end of the road. Did you ever see a war ending with one side conclusively winning? 100% versus zero. It never happens. This is the nature of war. This is the nature of evil. It corrupts everything in its environment. It hurts everything in its radius. And I don't want to live in that kind of life and reality anymore. I want to live a good life, and I want to leave a great legacy for my son. And hopefully my son could still live in this country when he grows up. Right now, he's not living here anymore, by the way. I've sent him to Australia because of how fucked up this is here. So, with his father, for everyone's concerned and worried, just
not
he's
on his
own. He's
Yeah.
with his father, right? But that's the ultimate question that I am left with. Do I really want this life? And my answer is no, I don't want this anymore. And and by the way, here's another important piece of that realization or insight. Not only that I don't want this life, I want to stop victimhood. I want to stop feeling like a victim. I want to stop my people from feeling like victims. And I want other people my neighbors to stop feeling like victims. Yes, we have been victimized. We have been taken advantage. We have been forsaken for many centuries. Not just Jewish people, Palestinians, many people in the world have been victimized, and they have taken on that role of being the victim. And they are going out yelling and protesting and putting signs out saying, you know, we've been infiltrated, we've been hurt, and we now demand justice, and we want to kill because of it, and we want to, you know, fight in the name of it. And I say enough, you know, enough of that victimhood, because it leads to nothing but more violence and more war. And if I can say I'm not a victim of reality anymore, and I'm not a victim of my history, and I'm not a victim of my religion, and I'm not a victim of my geographical situation, then I start creating a new world. And I'm not naive. I'm not living in La La Land. I know how fucked up and complicated this is. I know that maybe not even in my lifetime I'll be privileged to see change, but at least I am starting change by saying I want change. You know, and I have the balls to say that, and the humbleness to say that there is no revealing of the truth here because it's too hard, but let's at least put our weapons down and start something else, you know?
I think that's, I think it's a good segue to go on an outro, but Efrat, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate what you do and everything that you said. You know, keep it up. I know things aren't great at the minute, especially, well, throughout the West, obviously it's, you know, civil liberties are eroding, but as well, people like yourself in Israel who want to question their government, who want to question policies, I can imagine it's very, very difficult. So, yeah, thank you for everything that you've done and continue to do.
Thank you so much for giving me the stage and allowing me to take my thoughts and ideas a little bit further away, because I don't always have the chance to do that. I mean, I interview many people on my podcast, but, you know, I give them the stage. So it's cool to do this. And thank you for what you're doing, dude, because we need more crazy people like you and I doing what we're doing.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Of course.
Efrat Fenigson, thank you so much.